Waiters slash servers of Reddit, what is the best clapback you've delivered to a rude customer? Way back in the day, when I worked in food service, we had a customer who got a salad, and when she was finished placed one of her hairs in the bowl in order to get it refunded, and got the complimentary "I'm sorry" free bakery item. She did this every day. Finally the DM sat down at her table and told her this was her last day eating in the cafe. They would refuse her refund today and refuse her service in the future. She started to say something about the customer always being right, and he just put up a hand to cut her off and said, "You cause us to lose money every day. You're absolutely not our customer. You are a liability and you are no longer welcome here." Edit. Because many people have asked, it took embarrassingly long to get there. I worked in training support and the issue came to light during an associate level customer service class. They had been going with it for at least a few weeks. I'm not sure if the managers all knew what was going on, but I called their GM and DM after class, and it was taken care of between the two of them by the end of that week. I was a witness to a silent owning that I get giddy thinking of. Buddy of mine serving a table and the kid is around 8 to 10. Gives her an adult glass for her apple juice. Dad pipes up and says he doesn't want her having all that sugar, so he needed to take it away and come back with a kid-sized one. My friend replied that the glasses are the same size, the adult size just looks bigger because they have thick bottoms. The dad responds that the adult glass is clearly bigger, and like I said, I don't want her to have all that sugar. My buddy is an asshole. He gives a super deliberate exaggerated nod, says nothing and marches to our little service alley behind the bar and re-emerges with a kid's cup, said sit down beside the glass, picks up the glass and pours the adult glass, lifting it progressively higher until the last drops he drops from like a foot over the glass, and darts the fuck off to the kitchen without even looking at the guy like didn't even exist. I died. Edit. Now that I think about it, he's a Redditor. He blew up maybe 7 to 10 years ago for giving his dog with terminal cancer a bacon wrap last meal. Don't know his use / to give him proper cred. Served in Muskoka, Ontario years ago. Lots of celebrities in the area for the summer. Served Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn burgers, Martin Short, Dan Aykroyd, etc. Had a local nobody who thought he was a big sheet celebrity, would never tip, and would always crumple up both copies of the Visa bill into a tiny little ball, even chew on it till it was the size of a spitball. So this is hat comes in with a bunch of friends and treats them all to supper. $600 bill, crumples up the Visa bills again into the tiny little ball, and flicks it at me with a grin on his face. I swiftly kick it off the patio, and into the lake our patio is on. He sees this, and says in front of the table, "Guess you won't know what your tip is now." I tell the table flat out he never tips anyway, so no loss, and walk away. They leave. I call the police on a dime, and dash because there is no evidence this guy paid. It's in the lake now, and I deleted the pre-auth from the debit machine. Cops go to this guy's house, and make him return to the restaurant to pay. He wasn't an asshole ever again. Hosts had me a table with a couple and their toddler. The two sat on the same side of the booth, kissed, etc. so I knew they were a couple, but the woman looked much older. Like she looked terrible. I'm sure it was drug abuse of some kind, but it was noticeable. So she's super rude to me the entire time. She asked for her eggs over easy hard. Our conversation went like this: me, ma'am, your eggs can be over easy, which is kind of runny, or over hard where they're fully cooked. Oh, bless your heart, you have no idea, do you? Me, ma'am, why don't you get me a real server, and he can make my eggs the way I like them. Me, ma'am, I know how eggs are cooked. Over easy hard doesn't tell me anything. Do you want them over medium? How hard is your job? Honestly, how hard is it to just serve people eggs? I'd had it. I gave her order to the cook, and of course he asked me what she meant. I told him to just make them over medium, as I felt like that was what she meant. I gave her the eggs and she sighed real heavy. I'm sorry, was my order too hard? Did ya not understand me? What the hell kind of place is this, that nobody can make me eggs? I took a deep breath, and said this: "Ma'am, I apologize to you, your son, and your grandson. Let me go ahead and comp your meal." Her face twisted up and got so red I thought it was going to pop off of her face. "This is my husband and that's my son, OHH. Boy, it was so worth it." Where? is your manager. I need your manager right now. I got my manager. He yelled at me in the office, but couldn't prove that I was purposefully disingenuous. So I didn't even get written up. It was awesome. Kind of a long one. Working in a resort. Guest is a type A sheethead that thinks he's fatuous. You know the type. Obviously has to be the group leader of a table full of 4 to 5 other dudes. During my spiel I told the table we are out of a certain thing. I don't remember what or why. I start taking the table's order and get to him. Tars, I'll have the thing. Me. As I said, sir, we are out of thing. Tars. Maybe I'll just call my good friend general manager and they'll find some for me. Me. You're more than welcome to do so, but the number on the business card you picked up at the front is an office number, not their personal phone. Also they're the one that just told me we are out of thing. Maybe if you called general manager in advance to let your good friend know you were coming we could have held some back specially for you. Now, this may not seem all that destructive, but to this guy, at this table full of his colleagues, it was faking brutal. He tried to save face, but it failed so faking hard. Tars, well if you can't keep your food in stock then we probably should have gone somewhere else to eat. The gauntlet has been thrown down. Point me. That's an excellent idea, sir. Would you like me to check if there is a table free at our steakhouse? Tars. Yes, maybe then I can get some food. He starts talking to the other guys in the group, like somehow we are in the wrong here. They're all just looking at him, like he's a total faking cunt, because he is. I go to the phone, call the steakhouse, and ask if they have space for one. They do. Good. Back to the table. Point me. You'll be happy to know, sir, that our steakhouse is able to accommodate you, and will have a table waiting when you arrive. Tars. In the cuntiest voice he can muster, which is nowhere near as cunty as I could be. Thank you for some kind of service. He turns to the rest of the table. Let's go, guys. Me. I'm sorry, sir. I was under the impression you would be dining alone, and didn't ask if they could take a party this size. I assumed they'd be dining with us seeing as they all ordered items we have available. The guy just looks dumbfounded, and while he's standing there trying to process this sheet one of the dudes at the table chimes in. DT, don't worry about it, Tars. Head on down there. We'll meet up at resort bar for drinks later. Tars grabs his drink, says nothing, and walks out. He hits the door and the rest of the table goes into that quiet water beach. Laugh that only men of a certain age and income bracket are able to do properly. The kind that lets you know this is funny now, but come Monday, that motherfucker's world is going to be slightly different in many small ways. The evening continues. Yes, this shit happened. Yes, I have more stories. Yes, I really fucking miss that job. Anyway, the evening continues, and sometime after I take that table their dessert my general manager pulls me aside. GM, what the hell happened? I spent the last half hour getting yelled at by some guy that says you were super rude to him. I give GM a quick rundown. We did not have what the gentleman wanted, so I made him a reservation at the steakhouse. End of story. I have no idea why he would possibly be upset. His coworkers over at table number are having a great time. GM goes over to their table and starts talking to them, presumably starting with how their meal was and ending with what happened with the other guy that I saw with you. It was faking beautiful. They had my back the whole way. They threw him so far under the bus for acting like a dick he rolled out the other side and got hit by a semi in the next lane over. They were nothing but complimentary to me, which was a nice bonus. GM came back over and told me everything seemed fine with them, shrugged it off, and went back to doing whatever GMs do. For anyone that actually read this far, just take this bit of information and carry it with you always. Nothing infuriates shitty humans more than someone doing exactly what they want done, monkey paw style. This'll probably get buried, but I enjoy the story. I work in retail. Big box home improvement store that deals with a lot of contractors, but I got promoted to an hour position, so I don't work with customers that often anymore, but I like to work the floor still, just to help out. One small time contractor was trying to return 3 large flat carts full of merchandise from her last job and she wanted it back in cash with no receipt. We offered to look through all of her orders in the system to find the receipts, but she didn't want to wait for that, she just wanted the cash. So I start ringing up the merchandise, knowing the system won't let me return it with no cash, but I just wanted to show her that store credit was the only option. The merchandise ends up totally around $3,000, and I show her the register says store credit only. She gets irate and demands to speak to the store manager, SM. I tell her that he's not available, and even if he was, even he couldn't override the system. She says something along the lines of, I don't know what magic wand he used to make it happen, but he helped me do this before, and I want him to do it again. He knows me, and if you tell him who I am, then he'll help. So I whip out my cell phone and call his personal phone. Hey SM, I'm really sorry to bother you on your vacation, but I have a customer here who has a problem that she says only you can fix. Do you remember contractor's name? Oh, you don't? Well, she says you helped her return merchandise without a receipt for cash. You don't remember that? Okay. Yay. I'll have one of the assistant managers take care of it. She was pissed, and I told her the only way we could do it is by having one of the assistant managers calling our regional asset protection manager, who would have to approve it. She ended up taking the store credit. As the owner, I love this story. I used to own a concession business, selling various novelty food items like kettle corn, shaved ice, etc. One of our weekly shows was busy AF. So busy occasionally, we'd have 50 plus in line. Admittedly, the wait took a bit. However, my staff and I busted our ass, like there was an electric cord shoved up our ears, to service people as quickly as possible. This one guy is non-stop beaching. I hear him from 20 people away, so I wait. Once sees a few people from the front, I turn to my staff and say, shut off the equipment. The equipment was loud, so turning it off created an odd silence. With there still 50 plus people in line, I turn to the guy and say loud enough for everyone in line to hear, sir, I'm not sure if you noticed how hard my staff is working to get you your kettle corn as quickly as possible. Perhaps you have some suggestions for us to make it go faster for you. I can't remember if he stayed, but everyone else in line clapped on behalf of my staff. The customer is not always right. I was serving a group of 40 people with one other server. As we're bringing plates out, she asks me for a side of ranch. As I'm bringing second set of plates out, took me like 4 to 5 trips. She asks again, then again. Obviously I'm going to bring people's hot food out before a faking ranch lady. Basically I ended up forgetting about her ranch cause she wouldn't stop asking when I clearly couldn't. She waits around after everyone leaves. By the way, this was a free meal being paid for by people hosting these people, so they could tell them about some business opportunity. I don't know, basically it was a free meal for her. And asks me if I was ever going to get her ranch in a snobby tone, and without thinking I just said no. Lady loses it and literally starts yelling at me, and in my calmest voice, people don't like you being calm when they are raging, it makes them angrier. I said haha, okay, maybe don't yell at me, to which she kept yelling, and I went okay haha, but maybe don't yell at me. And after the second one I could actually see the clarity, like she developed self-awareness for a second. Clapback wasn't witty, but she realized she was flying off the handle. Was great. I'm not either, but I was in a restaurant once, and this woman comes up to the waiter and goes, excuse me, but I have been waiting for my food for nearly 5 minutes now. She had a party table and a table of 8. The waiter then calmly goes to her, ma'am, you realize the restaurant is extremely busy. You have a table of 8 and we have minimum staff. It's going to take a whole lot longer than 5 minutes to cook your food. Bearing in mind, this was a week before Christmas, so everyone was having really Christmas dinners. She then huffs and goes to sit down. 5 minutes later, goes back again. Woman, so we have been waiting 10 minutes. Where is our food? Waiter, getting slightly annoyed, ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to sit down and wait patiently or leave. Woman, I want to talk to the manager. Waiter, ma'am, the manager is on maternity leave. I'm the assistant manager, and I'm asking you to sit down or leave. Woman goes to sit down. By this point nearly the entire restaurant was trying to not laugh. The waiter talks to the cook to get the woman's food out first. 2 minutes later, he does so. They eat, leave money for the bill, and then get ready to leave. Waiter comes over. Waiter, did you enjoy your food? Woman, yes, not thanks to you though. Waiter, Literally almost at the end of his tether, ma'am. If not for me, you would still be waiting, woman. I'm going to leave a bad review on this restaurant and get you sacked from your job, waiter. I won't get sacked thanks to a bimbo like you who thinks everyone has all the time in the world to cater for you. The woman and her party left after that. I never did find out what happened, but I applaud that waiter for acting so calm. I worked for a guy who was too timid to refuse service to a couple who would come in every Saturday night, order a pizza, and find some asinine excuse to demand a refund, and wouldn't even tip. I'll have you know, I make an impeccable pie. When I told him he needed to put his foot down, he gave me that customer is always right excuse point. So, next Saturday, I see their usual order, and the waitress said they bragged they were here for their free pizza. I figure shit, I can make $15 anywhere, so I walk to their table and introduce myself as the guy who has made their pizza every week for the last 6 months. I said I was doing our paying customers a disservice by entertaining their act, and I would no longer be cooking any food for them whatsoever, since it was clear they didn't like my cooking. Anyway, if they wanted to pay for a different meal prepared by someone else, then that's up to them, but I wasn't wasting any more of my time making pizzas for them. One muttered, but we wanted a pizza, so I told her try a faking Domino's. It wasn't imaginative or very clever to begin with, but I was running a gas station all alone. It was Easter Sunday, and I was supposed to be with my family, but the girl who was supposed to relieve me just didn't show up. She would periodically no call no show with no consequence, but this time she called me and told me she was hungover and would get there. When she got there, I called my manager. No answer because it's Easter Sunday. I called the assistant manager. Same thing. I'm supposed to be on my way home to change into my Easter Sunday clothes and heading home to be with my family, but I'm still at this shitty gas station because someone is hungover. I was so mad someone bought a pack of cigarettes and I went to grab them from the open carton and the corner of the cardboard just vanished inside of my thumb as I started springing blood out of my thumb. My high blood pressure at the moment was making the blood splurt out over everything. It was a deep cut. Panicked. I wrapped it in several paper towels and went to quickly look in our first aid kit for bandages. We had about 5 of them piled on top of each other. Opened the first one, no bandages. Second one, nothing. Third one, nothing. Fourth one, I finally found a decent bandage, opened it up, and wrapped my thumb. Got back to work cause there was a line. Heard an alarm going off in the back room. Ran back there, realized we were out of gas, and I had to shut off all the pumps because, legally, you can't let the gas tanks get to a certain level and still sell gas. I shut the pumps off, which you can imagine pleased everyone who was stopping off of the interstate to get gas before getting back on. Plus we were still slammed with people wanting to buy cigarettes, cigarellas, and everything else we offered. Also, I had to pee for like 2 hours and couldn't leave behind the counter, or really at all, because I was the only one there in this giant store. Suddenly a customer informs me that the drink machine is broken. If no one knows what a Circle K is, it basically sells itself on its 0.85 drinks. It's almost people come in for. I slap a giant out of order sign on the machine and go back to work. A lady, we'll call her Karen, because you know where this is going, comes in and demands to know why the gas pumps won't work. This is almost verbatim, because I won't forget this until the day I die, because we're out of gas, ma'am. What? Do you mean you're out of gas? You're a gas station. This is ridiculous. Well, we're out of gas, ma'am. It's been a long weekend and the truck isn't here. Then why isn't there a sign on every single one of those pumps that says you're out of gas? Because I'm working all alone and I have a line, ma'am. This is definitely a 100% accurate quote. Millions of people work alone every day. You should be used to it by now. I faking snapped. I lost it. There had been a lot of bullshit at this job leading up to this day. I was sitting there when I was supposed to be in front of my family eating my metric weight in honey ham and mashed potatoes, with my thumb wrapped up in bloody paper towels and a blood-soaked bandage. We had no gas. We had no drinks. People were still filing in to take a chunk out of me every 5 minutes because of it. I couldn't fix anything. No one would pick up the phone to help me because I'm faking busy, you stupid faking cunt. I screamed. The only time in my life I'd ever use the C word. The insult wasn't great. What made it, however, was the group of 4 black guys that were standing in line that looked at each other and gave a stereotypical oh shit. Like I'd just hit her with the bestest they'd heard that recess on the school ground. The woman flushed as I came around the corner, and she left out of the front door. I turned to the line and said, I'm going to take a piss. If any of you want to steal anything, faking geo for it. And vanished into the bathroom. 1 quiet nervous breakdown later, and about 5 minutes, I came out of the bathroom and everyone was still sitting there in line. Everyone was even really nice to me, to be honest. I think they all knew, despite my use of one of the most vile words ever and halfway yelling at them, I had had a real breakdown there. Everyone politely paid for their items. Things eventually quieted down, and the girl who was going to replace me showed up 2.5 hours late, and I got to go to Easter Sunday and at least enjoy leftovers. I quit a month later for another incident that was quasi unrelated. It was my last day working at a fancy hotel breakfast buffet before heading back to college when I was 19. Was a great employee for multiple summers and had done my full 2 weeks. Every morning around 9 AM we'd have a 15 to 20 minute wait because again, point 1 breakfast buffet, peak season, 1100 rooms in the place and only business people come down for breakfast before 830. This lady walks up, acting really beachy, takes one look at the parties we have waiting, and says snidely to me, are these people waiting for breakfast? Yes, sorry, we are on a short wait, unfortunately, but I can take your name, and we do have complimentary coffee and orange juice in the cocktail lounge area right here. No, that's ridiculous. Do you have any other places for breakfast here? We sure do. There's a Starbucks at the end of the hall that has pastries and sandwiches, if you're in a hurry. They don't have a line currently. No, I mean a nicer sit down place like this. Unfortunately, we do not, ma'am. She starts the typical Karen this is unacceptable bullshit. My patience was already thin because our buses were running slow today, so I was antsy for tables to be clean and trying to clear some between customer names, and this lady was holding up the name taking, look, there's Starbucks down the hall or Waffle House down the street. Otherwise, it's a 15 to 20 minute wait. She got even madder and wouldn't budge. She starts bragging on, do you know who I am? We paid $30 for these rooms and this is insane. By the way, everyone else in line also paid for rooms, so like, shrug, you ain't special. She at one point actually said I refuse to wait with these people, loudly as she gestured to folks waiting in line who were very much within earshot. She pointed to a dirty table that folks had just gotten up from and was stacked high with dirty dishes and said, what about that table? To which I replied, look, if you want to get your dainty little hands dirty, clean it and it's yours. I've got a rag and bucket right here. Otherwise, it's back of the line or find somewhere else. My manager was walking up behind me halfway through this to try and defuse it. But the lady stormed off before she could reach the hostess stand to apologize / calm things. So I turned to her and said, look, you're going to get your first complaint about me in 3 years today, but my shift ends at 12 and it's my very last day here, and I highly doubt you're going to fire me in the next 3 hours because I'm faking good at my job and busting as clearing tables. So take some names for a second and let me go clear some tables. I actually got an applause from the guests waiting behind me. I'm not sure if these count as clapbacks, as they aren't so much clever as escalating to the point of no return. Had an employee getting treated like shit in a hotel by a guest trying to check in who wanted shit he didn't reserve and started getting loud and abusive. The employee was handling it well, explaining the situation and that we simply couldn't do what the guy wanted because we actually didn't have it, something like I want a king bed when he reserved 2 doubles. Dude mutters under his breath, loud enough that I heard standing like 6 feet away, dirty Arab. Employee exploded. I'm not going to all caps this, but he was screaming at the top of his lungs, you call me dirty Arab, you fuck. Fuck you. Get the fuck out of my hotel, you fuck. Dude tried to mutter an apology and he just kept pointing at the door and screaming, get the fuck out. Get the fuck out. Dude grabbed his stuff and went out the door with his head down while the entire area was sold out. Probably had to take a 40-minute cab and pay out the ass for a room. Second one was actually a multi-million a year kids group's client's security team. They had wires running across aisles which were tripping hazards, had exits blocked by big armchairs they had dragged out of kids' rooms. My security guard told them it was a fire hazard and we'd be in some sheet if anyone saw it and reported us, or the fire marshal dropped by. They went ballistic. It was like 3 AM when he called me, and I could hear the 7 of them screaming at him and telling him they were going to fuck him up and that their company spent so much money he would lose his job when they complained. While I trusted him with our security, I knew this dude's background and current life. It was rough. He had family members dying of terrible diseases and he'd been in serious gang warfare when he was young that had left him hospitalized and in a coma for months. I can't really explain how bad what I heard over the phone was, but my dude was about to get assaulted and was showing incredible restraint. He was practically crying on the phone while knowing he probably could have taken most of them down. I got him to put them on the phone and they started screaming at me about him. I explained I had been on the phone the whole time and heard everything. They then told me I had no authority over them and again cited the massive contract our client had with us. I told them I manage this hotel, you are breaking our policy, and you are required to follow our policy. They mocked me and basically told me to fuck off when I told them I'd have all of them removed by the police. So I had all of them removed by the police at like 4 AM. I called and woke up chaperones and told them they were now security, then drove to work so my security could help them and make sure he was okay. He was physically shaking for like 2 hours after I got there. I had to have multiple meetings, emails, and convince that major contract we acted appropriately. They relocated that team to another hotel and demanded our security guard be fired. I reminded them that I witnessed them threatening to assault our guard and that they were lucky charges weren't being pressed. In the end we kept the contract and their new security team followed our rules. Fine dining open for lunch. Woman whose husband runs a crappy cheap furniture chain who is rude AF. She has no class and is rude AF too. She would always come in with a couple of those busybody plastic surgery women who were obsessed with making sure you knew they could afford to eat there day after day. One day, they drink a bunch of house wine, which was still very good, that her friend ordered for the table. She insisted on paying the bill, as usual, and upon reading house on the receipt, she gasps and looks at me, making sure her friends can hear her comment and says, "If Sheldon, husband, knew I was drinking house wine, he'd be mortified." I replied, "If your $300 lunch tab showing house wine is the worst part of Sheldon's day, Sheldon is having a better day than most of the rest of us." I thought she was going to sheet her fancy pants. Her friends were flabbergasted. She said something to the manager about how rude I was, for which I was prepared. The manager, knowing her tendency for the dramatic, says, "Would you like a different section tomorrow?" Lol. Doesn't seem like much, but in this place, it was a thunderclap. It was awesome. Not a waiter, but I used to work in the service industry, so I hope this counts. There was a kid who was acting like a brat in my store. He was like 12 and had like 4 girls with him. He was wearing guxy and piling up stupid expensive candy at the counter. He kept acting like he might not have enough to pay for it. Then when it came time to check out, he pulls out a roll of 20s. He probably had over $1,000 on him. He buys the candy, and when I ask him if he wants to donate to help bring entertainment to kids in hospitals, he says yes. So, he was a little obnoxious, but no big deal. Then he comes back the next day and is doing the same thing as the night before. 4 different girls, piling up candy, acting like maybe he won't have enough to pay for it. The whole shebang. Now I'm not usually the confrontational type, and this kid wasn't hurting anyone, so this is way out of character for me. In my defense, I had been working for 2 weeks straight starting on Thanksgiving, and I was exhausted. Anyway, this kid comes up to the counter, and we go through the same song and dance as the night before. Again, he's loaded with cash acting like a suave little brat, and I ask him if he wants to donate for the kids in the hospital. He sucks in this breath and winces like it hurts him to say it, and he goes, "Now I did that yesterday." Without me even thinking, I said, "Well, those kids are still in the hospital." My coworker loses it, the girls lose it, the kid is humiliated. I'm still comprehending that I just shouted at a customer who actually did nothing wrong. He buys his stuff, excluding the donation, and leaves. He didn't come back to the store for over a year, and when he finally came back he was just as much a brat as before. And I ended up getting him trespassed from the mall for shoplifting. It wasn't necessarily a clapback, but I had this one table that was at my restaurant for a business dinner on a packed Saturday night. My section was full, and I was slammed when they asked me for more bread. I asked a busser if he could run them some. He forgot, no biggie, but when I checked back in on them, he started screaming at me for being so mindless, idiotic, and for embarrassing him at his business meeting amongst other personal complaints. I just smiled and said, "I'm so sorry everyone that I've embarrassed you at your dinner. I didn't mean to be so mindless. Please forgive me for being an idiot. I'll come back with bread right away," as genuinely as I possibly could, and made eye contact with everyone at the table. The whole group looked uncomfortable already from the main dude's outburst, but when I reiterated his insults his face turned white. He later came up to apologize for being rude to me, but boosting his I'm a total asshole effect was worth way more than his apology and autograt combined. Was working a wine dinner where every place setting at every table was reserved in advance. One of my tables of 4 gets a 5th guest. Fine, I roll with it, I'm a pro, whatever. I go to the table to get the entree choice order, starting with the interloper. He tells me his choice, then says, "And can I get a place setting?" I acknowledge, then go around the table getting the other 4 entree choices. After taking the last order, the interloper again says, "And can I get a place setting?" I respond, "Sir, I haven't left the table yet." Years later, was managing a restaurant. One of my waiters comes to me saying that one of his customers complained about hair in the food. This is a serious issue, and I take it seriously. The waiter shows me the hair. 12 inches long, bright fuchsia brownish reddish. In other words, not a color normally found on humans in nature. I tape the hair diagonally across a piece of white printer paper, then go to the table. It's a party of 6, and they're ready to rumble, especially the husband of the one lady at the table with 12-inch long fuchsia brownish reddish hair. I go in all smiles, ask for their story, etc. End of the day, I'm a nice guy, and I have a good budget for carbs. So I look at the lady with the hair and say, "Look, you're not happy with your entree, I'll take care of it. But I want you to understand, nobody on my staff has hair this length and color." I give her the paper, walk away. Same restaurant, had to kick out a local business owner who had gotten drunk at the bar and was being rude creepy to our other customers. I went out to the valet, took his keys, called a cab, then told the valet to move their cart 15 feet away from the drunk so he would abuse me and not them. Drunk proceeds to insult me while waiting for his cab, finishing with, "What's your name? I know the owner of the restaurant and I'm going to have you fired." I pulled out my business card, handed it to him, and said, "Make sure you spell my name correctly." I used to work in a small cafe in northern New Jersey. This story isn't specifically something I did, but something I was in shift to watch happen. Sally, waitress on shift. Literally one of nicest, sweetest people you'll ever meet. Rob, support person on shift. About 6 feet 2 inches, very well spoken, and extremely protective of his friend's old man, a customer at the restaurant, who clearly had a chip on his shoulder and a dislike for women. It was a pretty busy Saturday evening shift, and I had my hands full with a million tickets at the grill. Rob was up to his shoulders in dishes, and Sally was running all over the cafe managing about 12 tables by herself. At the peak of the dinner rush, Sally walls into the kitchen looking like she's about to burst into tears. Rob immediately notices and asks her what is wrong. She explains that a customer, old man, has just loudly insulted her in front of his whole family, as well as any neighboring tables that could have overheard. Apparently, she had accidentally grabbed one too few rolls of silverware for the table, and before she could apologize and go to grab another, old man had yelled that she was lazy and stupid and should find a competent waiter to take her place serving them. All of the employees on shift were shocked to hear this, as normally our customers are quite pleasant, and Rob wasted no time in drying his hands and offering to help Sally take their food out to them. When they did, Rob spoke as if he was talking to the whole table, but stared directly at old man to make it clear who he was really addressing. He sat down the food at the table and said something along the lines of, "I heard a bit of a commotion over here earlier. Do we have a problem here?" Having been clearly called out on his sheet, old man refused to meet Rob's eyes and was apparently relatively subdued the rest of dinner. Rob delivered any food/drinks to old man specifically, continuing to make him uncomfortable, while Sally waited on the rest of his family. We got no tip from his table, shocker, but it was payment enough to watch him squirm under Rob's carefully worded comments throughout the course of his meal. Had a table around 10:30 at night on a Friday with two guys in their mid-30s wearing work shirts, a woman of similar age, and a little girl who looked pretty tired. One of the men explained, with alcohol already on his breath, they were there for his friend's daughter's 7th birthday. Poor kid. After an exhausting meal, that included a $30 discount, because one of the men was too loaded to remember that he'd approached me at the computer as I was ringing their order in, and changed his entree to something completely different, I dropped off the check and told them I'd be right back to pick it up. They didn't listen, brought the check to the front, whatever. I'm happy to ring them out there. I noticed that the card the guy gave me wasn't signed, so I asked for his ID. Most people are happy to show me, as I explain it's to make sure they're the only one using their card. This guy, though, loudly asked, "Don't you know who the fuck I am?" I smiled sweetly and said, "No, sir, that's why I need to see you ID." He was pissed. I made a mental note of his name and looked him up on Facebook later that night. As it turns out, he was the owner of a two-man landscaping business, one town over, with 100 likes and one 5-star review written by him. Clearly, I should have recognized him. Bonus, after I said my line about the ID, he ripped his card out of my hand, pulled out a wad of cash, and counted out $70 for a book that came to about $74 and change after their huge discount. Spineless manager. I told him it was short, and he said, "Yeah, fuck you," and left. I approached his friend, who was standing in the entryway engrossed in his phone, and explained that his friend hadn't paid the full balance of the bill. He also pulled out a wad of cash, took out a $5, and gave me a story about how he couldn't give me a tip because he hadn't gotten paid yet, like I couldn't see the big wad of cash in his hand. They left, but before I could even get into the kitchen to vent to a coworker, the two guys stormed back in, saying they forgot their keys. The table was already cleaned by then, and one of them tried to force his way into the kitchen because he didn't believe that we didn't have them. As I helped to block the way, I told him that if we had his keys, I would have given them to him right away because I wanted him to leave. He threatened that they wouldn't leave without the keys, and I told him I'm sure he wouldn't because cars can't run without them. The keys eventually turned up on the floor, and they accused the busboy of holding them in his pocket and dropping them onto the floor to be found. I think they either got kicked and were suddenly visible, or that one of the assholes found them in their pocket and felt like a dick. The night, thankfully, ended with them getting trespassed from the restaurant by the police and my manager voiding $50 from the check for me to keep as a cash tip. I'm a petite female and have worked in the service industry for about 6 years or so. The worst is working in sports bars during college football season, and on one such occasion I had a delightful group of gentlemen dining with me. The head man, who was definitely the one bankrolling the afternoon, kept grabbing my waist and commenting on how better watch your figure working in a place like this. Lotta extra carbs. etc. It was tame enough, but definitely got my blood boiling after the second or third time. Now these guys had made it clear they were on a lunch break from work and were pretty spicy about the fact that their sandwiches were taking upwards of 15 minutes to be ready. The head man kept saying we are on a time crunch, Yano, jobs to get back to. Then he said you'll understand when you get a real job, to which I responded, oh my god, you mean the money they pay me isn't real? Excuse me for a moment, I need to take care of something. Boom, transferred him to a male coworker and went home. I'm a bartender. A year ago I served this faking idiot that did too much cocaine and started yelling at me because he was thinking I was trying to trick him for some cash. He was screaming for like 15 minutes. 2 bodyguards wanted to get him out, but I didn't let them. I wanted this asshole to pay. So after 15 minutes of screaming at me, he did pay, and then I go, as kindly as I can, thank you for paying. While you were screaming, one of our friends called the police, so could you just get the fuck out from here? Or you want them to find some cheap drugs in your pocket? Your wife sitting next to you is a lawyer. One friend knew her because she was regular at the bar he used to work at, and even she won't be able to help you because we have all this on security cameras, trust me. He literally ran out from the bar hitting his head on the doors by accident. 30 people at the bar were like, what the fuck just happened? Well played, GG point. And yes, we didn't call the police. I just said it to play with his faked by drugs head. Not a sever, but a former barista. Had a woman come in a couple times a month. She'd order a drink and a food item, and at the end of her order she'd say, last time they made my drink like this, and I had ordered it like Zykes. Can you make it for free this time? After a while everyone in the store had heard this story, asked if she had called the store, and said she'd be coming back for her freebie. She always said nope, but you can't really do anything about it. Luckily for me, she did this to me on my very last day of work. I wasn't a dick to her, but I told her very calmly that, since she hadn't called ahead and told us she couldn't get a free one, she had also, that time, asked for a free slice of banana bread or something, because the last one fell apart lol when she tried to eat it, and I also told her no to that, because we didn't have a way to give away free food without it becoming lost in the system. She didn't make a stink about it then, but my friend who worked there after I left told me she came in a couple days later trying to report me to my old boss, saying I screamed at her and pushed her away from the cash register. She also apparently got her daughter to come in too after then, saying the same thing, and everyone had a great time acting like I had never worked there and the two of them had made the whole thing up. Miss Food Service, lol. This was back when I used to work at a KFC/Taco Bell. Guy ordered the 2-piece chicken special, ate all of it, comes up to complain that he didn't like it. Mind you, he had devoured it until all of it was gone. Manager doesn't want to deal with him as he's a bit crazy/comes in a lot, so he gives him another 2-piece for free. Guy eats all of it again, comes up to register and tries to do the same thing he did to my manager with me. Says he doesn't like it again and wants another one. I reply, okay, that will be $2.50 or whatever price it was back then, and no, you will not get it for free. All the grease all over your face shows you liked it a lot. Now pay up or go home. Guy was too stunned to do anything and walked off without the food. My manager later yelled at me for being rude, but also high-fived me because that guy was a constant asshole and always tried to get stuff for free. I quit working there and they closed the place down, but my former manager says the guy stopped trying to get it for free and actually paid for every meal after that. A handful of years ago I worked in an upscale brick oven pizza and brews kind of place. I was younger, more fit, and single. I was serving this unremarkable middle-aged couple, a man and a woman, with everything going smoothly the whole time. I had other tables, but not many, as it was still only late afternoon and not yet busy. I came to check and see if I could sell an overpriced cheesecake to the couple, but when they turned that dessert over down, they countered with an offer of their own. The man lambered back in his chair and said that his wife wanted to see my face. I froze up completely and looked at the woman, who was red-faced, staring into her plate as though to dig a way out of the restaurant with the pet of her vision alone. But she wasn't contradicting her partner or yelling him to stop. I, a mostly straight, mostly vanilla beast guy of my then early 20s, just couldn't make my brain work to say something to escape. So I just paused motionless for seconds as my stomach froze, then finally said, only on Tuesdays, with a grin and finger guns, all while walking away quickly. It was Saturday. So one day I was at work and we were real busy. I also took a couple tough exams at school that day, so I wasn't in a good mood. We tend to get a lot of Karen type customers at the restaurant because we are in a nicer neighborhood. Anyway, I'm serving a table of 4 and I take everyone's orders. One woman gets our Kobe beef burger and asks for it medium rare. I of course warn her that medium rare means red in the center and mostly pink throughout. She says yes, I know what medium rare means. Great, now I'm in the kitchen and the chef calls me over asking me if this customer really wanted medium rare or if I just put in the order on mistake. I assure him it wasn't a mistake, and eventually the food goes out. Now I'm running around to other tables doing waiter things and such, when I hear snap snap, excuse me. I turn and of course it's our Karen, and she's waving me over to her table, where she shows me a cross section of her burger. Does this look medium rare to you, sir? And I look at the burger, seeing that it is in fact medium rare, and I say, yup. She was completely taken aback by this, and I ask her if she would like me to have it taken back to the kitchen and cooked to a greater extent. So I take it back, get grilled by the chef for not reading the customer, and take her medium well burger back to her. I didn't get a tip. I worked as a lead host at an upscale steakhouse for 3 years, which meant I was the one greeting the entitled customers and telling them wait times. We were always booked weeks out / on waits. A lady in her 30s came in, clearly very wealthy, with her husband and baby in a stroller. She made her way through a sea of people waiting and huffed to and a baby, and I'd like something by a window for more light. It's always so dark in here. I smiled and told her the wait. Her response, no way am I waiting. I told her the wait again, and she took a pager. The wait was 45 minutes, mind you, so short compared to usual. She comes up about 20 minutes in, and then 30 minutes in, demanding her table. Both times, I start by telling her the time she was quoted, and what time she checked in. The system tells me, so there wouldn't be human error. The 30-minute time, though, she started to get angry, insisting it had been 45. Then it began. She started going off about how I'm just a host and I clearly don't know math. She said I have an MBA. Girlfriend, what do you have? A job at a restaurant? She wouldn't stop after that, though. She kept going. I was dumb. I probably failed out of school. She was educated and could do math in circles around me. I started smiling, cause I was literally in college at the time, and also who says that to people? She stomped her feet and stormed off after degrading me. So I waited until the 47th minute to call her up cause I'm petty like that, and she said that was over your quoted time. I said in a dramatic sad voice, oh, was it? I'm so sorry, I have no idea how to do math, I'm just a host. She has her mouth agape the entire time she walked to her table. Best part is my manager told me to do that. Server/bartender at a large chain sports bar. Had a couple show up one Sunday night during football season and head out to the patio. I'm in the process of bussing and cleaning a couple of tables and see them walk to the patio. Before I can get back to the well to grab some menus, the guy comes up to my manager and says he and his girlfriend have been waiting for some service outside for a while. I turn to my manager and tell him that they literally just sat down and I was heading out to greet them. It's pollen season, so I know the table is probably dirty, so I grab a rag and head outside. Get to the table. Homeboy's got his feet up on one of the chairs, leaning all over the table. Me, hey guys, how are y'all doing today? Them, silence. Me, let me get this table wiped down for you. Dude doesn't move. I lightly spray my rag down with harmless sanitizer and start to wipe the table down. Guy, hey, you just sprayed me. Me, shocked, I'm sorry. Can I get y'all started off with something to drink? Guy, you can get us a new server, because this is ridiculous. I head back inside to grab my coworker, L, and explain the situation. She heads out to the table and Jude is still being rude and disrespectful, but L is just cruising along with it. After going tit for tat with him for a bit, he stops and says, your boyfriend, husband, something must be black. L, as a matter of fact, my husband is. But I don't really know what that has to do with anything other than I'm not going to put up with your shit, cause I ain't got time for that. Girlfriend is flabbergasted. You could tell she was getting fed up with all his shit and was glad someone called him out on it. L goes back, puts their order in, and everything goes on without a hitch for the rest of the night. Dude seemed pretty shocked that someone finally called him out, but he wasn't mad about it. Seemed like he finally respected her for it. I didn't personally deliver this one. My manager did. A woman ordered a house salad which comes with 4 or 5 croutons. Keep in mind, she was one of those, cut off my greeting with, Diet Coke, and a wave of the hand types. I bring the salad to her, and she complains about the amount of croutons. What, you guys can't afford to give someone more than 2 croutons? In a very snotty tone, I just said, I'll be right back with more, ma'am. So I went to the back, got a small 2-ounce portion cupful from the kitchen, and my manager, we will call him Justin, walks by. What are all the croutons for? Oh, just some pussy lady that said our salads don't come with enough, so he grabs the portion cup from me. I'll take them out to her. Which table? I follow him to the front of house and watch as she complains and says, what is it with you people and trying to pinch every penny? They're just croutons. At this point, Justin just turns and heads back to the kitchen, grabs a full-sized dinner bowl, fills it with about 150 croutons and says, oh, so you'll get her faking croutons alright. At this point I'm dying as he heads back to the table and drops it off while I watch from a half wall about 10 feet away. He said sit down with a smile. There you go, ma'am. She glares at him with a, oh, you're gonna be a smartass now, huh? Justin replies with, ma'am, I'm just making sure you have all the croutons you need. I look and a couple other servers are next to me watching. The woman looks like she is about to blow a gasket and says sternly, I want to see your manager this instant. Justin gives her, right away, ma'am. Takes one step back from the table and does a full spin. Hello, I'm Justin, the service manager here. What seems to be the problem? All of us watching couldn't help but bust out dying laughing, and that lady wanted no part of the restaurant or Justin's croutons. Got pissed, shoved the bowl of croutons to the middle of the table, gathered her things, and left. Best server moment ever, and always grateful to my service manager for being such a boss. When I was 17 I started delivering pizzas. The area I grew up in had a huge waterfront suburb with massive multi-million-dollar homes. Most customers were nice and would tip a little, smile, be polite, leave the giant gates open so you could drive in, generally be decent humans, and realize that you are just a kid trying to make some dollar sign. Kinda eye-opening as a middle-class/poor kid seeing these houses and the cars their kids were driving, but that's another story. Yet there was this one fat knuckle, never tipped, $39.95, give you $40 and hold out his hand for the change, never unlock the gates, make you ring and stand around in the rain, then walk in the rain to his giant's entry. One day after standing in said rain, giving him his change, he then proceed to rip into me about leaving water all over his entryway and his pizza box being wet. I just said sorry and left, got back to the store, and he had complained that I was rude to him. I couldn't have been any nicer. Next week, same guy, same sheet, standing in the rain, except this time as I was walking up the driveway I shook the fuck out of his soda. This thing was about to explode. Gave him his delivery, and as I'm walking down the driveway about to get back to my car, I just hear the huge fuck coming from inside his house. I hope that sheet exploded everywhere. Yes, he complained. I pleaded ignorance, but my boss knew and just gave me this right kinda, you evil motherfucker. Smile, and we all moved on, and he never ordered from us again. Fuck that guy. Not food related. I work at a print shop. Older lady comes in, owner of an audiology company, will be ironic later, to get a photo printed off her phone. Older iPhone, and the photo is super grainy from way too much zoom. I tell her the quality is poor, but that I'll try printing it out for her anyway. I enlarge the photo to full sheet size, as requested, and lay the photo on the desk. She looks at me and tells me this isn't good enough. Photoshop it to make it clearer. I told her Photoshop can't make a photo any clearer. The image has to be clear when taken. She looks me straight in the eye and says, you're not listening to me. Make it clearer. So I go back to my desk, tinker with the color, sharpness, ECT, and print out another. She looks at me and says this isn't any better. I look down at the photo, then look her straight in the eye and say, you're not listening to me. Photoshop can't make a photo any clearer. She said it was good enough, paid, and left. That was my first time meeting her, but she came in many times after. Was never rude to me after that. Worked at a deli in my hometown years ago for a summer. My 2 coworkers were about 10 years older than me, and weird as fuck. We had regulars that came in every morning together. There were about 5 to 6 of them and retired, and they called their group the Breakfast Club. Most of them were fairly decent humans, but this one woman was awful and complained about everything. She has told me, and my coworker several times, that the toilet paper was too thin and her breakfast always came out to be a different price every day. She'd change her order every day. Of course, getting only a muffin vs a breakfast platter with coffee would be different in cost. We always had half and whole milk on the counter for coffee. It was self-serve, and she requested skim milk. We did not have skim milk. We never served it. My coworker got a quart one time and confirmed no one else used it, but she loved it. After that one time, he would refill it with half whole milk and half tap water, and she continued to use it for the rest of the summer I worked there. Yep, the expiration date on the container was old, and she never noticed and never complained again. I told this story on here once before, and it remains my favorite, though this isn't so much about clapping back at customers, but more to my manager. I used to work as a hostess. My coworkers never liked me from the beginning, because I wasn't Thai. They treated me like crap and I would be blamed for everything, and I just sucked it up because, well, the pay was extremely nice, $11.50/HR plus tips. One night about 10 to 15 minutes before closing, my manager approaches me and tells me to not let any more people in or take orders, so I said okay. Technically that meant my job was done and I could close out my register, but they never let me do that, even though other hostesses were allowed to. So, out of the corner of my eye I see a woman in a wheelchair trying to get in, but I tried to ignore her. I couldn't lock the doors, yet because there was still a couple finishing up their meal. One of the servers said, "Hey, someone's at the door, let them in." I tried to tell this dumb bitch that the manager told me to not let any more people in, but she was already opening the door for that person. My manager sees this and gives me those death glares. He marches to my hostess stand and he whisper yells at me and says, "I told you to not let anyone in. Go tell her to leave." I felt uncomfortable about kicking a disabled person out, and I guess she somewhat hears the conversation and says, "I'm just here waiting for my ride. I should be gone before you guys close." In my head I'm like, well, as long as she doesn't order any food, because then everyone would hate me even more. I hated this place, but I needed the money because I was going to school and blah blah. I remember distinctly that I had an exam early the next day and I was getting frustrated and anxious. I had not eaten all day and I've been working for 12 hours at that point. Once again this manager marches up to me and said, "Kick her out now." And I told him no. He leaves to go across the restaurant to sit at this booth. As he turns around to sit down, I catch him say something under his breath while he had those stupid glare/anger in his eyes. Well, guess what? This manager was about to feel my wrath because I was so done at this point. I look him dead straight in the eyes and say, "What the fuck did you say?" His eyes opened wide and had that disbelief, like he couldn't believe I just talked to him like that. Never have I ever stood up for myself at that job, and I always took insults and crap left and right, but not this night. I raised my voice at him and said, "Go talk to server's name." She let her in, not me. The manager remains silent and still in shock. I continued with, "I have an exam the next day and you're being fucking ridiculous. You go kick her out then." He sat there and looks at me and began to be nice and say, "Who let her in? I'll go talk to her. It's okay, you can go home." And I yelled at him some more and left. Lol. Point blah blah. Still had my job. He got demoted to chef. He was a terrible and lazy manager, and good thing the boss liked me. Next thing I knew he stopped showing up to the restaurant. Point. Sorry, I know this was a long one and not a rude customer clap back, but this was the most satisfying moment I had working at this stupid restaurant. Not my clap back, but I helped with the setup. Fancy restaurant in tourist area known for its seafood. I told them the specials, including freshly caught King George whiting for fish of the day. One of the table orders it. I deliver the food to the table. Do a welfare check a few minutes later. Everyone is happy. They finish eating. I clear their plates. They have coffee, then make to leave. Lady who had the fish says she won't pay for it, as she could tell it was frozen. I assure her it was fresh, but she insists. I go get the head chef, who comes out and assures her it's fresh. She still won't pay. He goes out and gets the invoice from that morning's delivery from the fish market. She still won't pay, insisting it was frozen. The head chef offers to go and get the owner. Plot twist, he is the owner. So he walks out into the kitchen, turns around and comes back in. Tells her to pay, or he will call the police. Walks up to the phone at the Matadi station. She pays. The whole restaurant, including all the staff, are just standing there in silence watching her pay and leave. So great. Worked in a 4-star hotel bar/restaurant. A well-dressed guy came in, ordered coffee, and set himself up with a work laptop. When I dropped the coffee off, he said, "I'm meeting a very important client. He should be here in a minute. Please take care of him quickly." Bar wasn't busy, so as soon as the client came in and sat down, I took his drink order. As I made the client's order, the first guy was looking sheepish and struggling with his laptop. I dropped the client's order over and asked if everything else is alright. Guy 1 said, "Your Wi-Fi isn't working," with a tone and sly gesture unseen by the client that I understood to mean, "You're making me look like an asshole. This is an extremely important meeting and your Wi-Fi situation is ruining this for me." I had just been on my morning break using the Wi-Fi on my phone, so I knew it was up and running. I asked if I could have a quick look at the laptop to check the connectivity. Guy 1 audibly snorts/sneers and says patronizingly, "Ha, yeah, sure, like you can fix it." Client visibly reacted to Guy 1's attitude, very taken aback at how he was treating a young lady only trying to help, and looks at me apologetically. I gave Guy 1 my trademark side eye, swiveled the laptop around, and see he's got the Wi-Fi switch set to off. Delighted, I nonchalantly declared, "Oh, there's the problem. You had the big Wi-Fi button on the front of the laptop here, switch to off. Let me fix that for you." Guy 1 turned puce. Client bit his lip and looked away, trying not to laugh. The browser refreshed, and Guy 1's Yahoo Mail account loaded up. I swiveled the laptop back round and said, "Wow, Yahoo? Really? Still? It's 2009. Client lost it and burst out laughing. Not exactly a clap back, but once I punched a dude for mocking a mentally disabled customer and then blowing me off when I called him out on it and asked him to leave. I was working as a lifeguard at a large public sports center at the time. I was in uniform. I had some anger issues at the time, and this dude had been straight up deprecating this poor heavily autistic girl. I told him what he was saying was inappropriate. He laughed in my face and told me to fuck off, then went on to say more derogatory things. I punched him in the jaw and he fell down, staggered up to his feet, and ran off. Got called into my boss's office at the end of my shift. There hadn't been anyone else around except the girl and her mother, but obviously there was CCTV. I was shitting myself for obvious reasons. Really couldn't afford to lose this job. My boss says that the mother spoke to him and explained what happened and that I shouldn't get in trouble. Boss deletes the CCTV, gives me a wink, and tells me not to do it again. I walked out of there feeling 10 feet tall. Worked at a seafood restaurant. Had a couple come in on a date night and the lady ordered crab legs. The crab legs don't come with a side. Is that okay? Yeah, that's totally fine. I ask the guy what he would like. I'll just have the same thing she is having. Sure thing. Yours doesn't come with a side either. Would you like to add one? No, I'm good. Ring their order in and bring out 2 sets of utensils for crab legs. I bring out 2 orders of crab legs and the guy looks at me and says, "Oh, I didn't order that." Me, "I'm sorry." Him, "Yeah, I wanted other item on the menu." Me, "Oh, I'm sorry sir. I guess I just got confused when you asked for the same thing that she was having. I'll take this back and have your new plate out right away." He gets this look as I take the plate away and he says, "You're going to take that?" Me, "Well, yeah. It's not what you ordered, remember?" He looks disappointed and says, "Oh, well, that's fine too." Yeah, I thought so. Enjoy your meals. The lady ended up paying for the meal. Felt bad for her. I had a customer complain that his salad had no dressing, balsamic. I took it to the kitchen and asked the kitchen staff, "Hey, can I get some balls on this salad real quick?" Balls just being the nickname we used for balsamic. The customer was at a table right by the kitchen and I guess he overheard. He lost his mind, demanding the manager and screaming and swearing and saying that he knew we were going to violate his food. I tried to explain, but he was having none of it. The manager comes over, calmly listens to his story, explains that he must have misheard and that he would take care of it. Then the manager comes into the kitchen with the guy's food and loudly yells, "Hey, somebody put balls on this guy's salad. Extra balls. Right away. Rooney, put your balls on this." I'm standing at the next table over at this point trying not to laugh. He brings the food back and tells the customer, "Here you are, sir, don't worry, we won't charge you for the extra balls." The guy paid his bill and left without eating a thing. The look on his face was pure gold. Might get buried, but I worked at an IHOP. I have stories for days. Friday nights we only had 2 servers on, 10 PM to 6 AM, and I got along great with my coworker. Unfortunately, she never alerted me to the fact she had epilepsy. She collapsed onto the floor around 130 AM when the drunk bar crowd starts showing up, and I rushed over to her to try to help. At first, I thought she was overdosing on drugs as she was turning purple in the lips. I had her head in my arms and another customer rushed over and said it was a seizure and to speak calmly to her. Has on his cell with 911. We sit there with her till the ambulance comes and the EMTs are loading her onto the stretcher. I see a man even pulling into the parking lot and think fuck. As like 7 people tumble out. They push past the gurney with my coworker on it as the EMTs are getting her to the ambulance. They try to seat themselves and I politely say, "Please wait a minute as I need to catch up. It's going to be a while before I get to you." Her and I had about 13 tables between us both. Some waiting for food, some waiting to cash out. These were my tables now. The cook came out from the kitchen to help with her too, so he was super backed up. Literally all the tables who witnessed this all were very patient and understanding. I ended up discounting all their bills, but this 7 top was so rude to me. Him going to my coworkers' tables to get their orders and make sure they are being made, cashing out other tables after transferring them to myself. It was a lot to do. I went to a table by the rude party and they interrupted me and were calling me names. I ignored them and went to my other tables. At this point I told myself I would play a game. See how long they will stay while I just ignore them. Not kick them out, but just not serve them. It took them an hour before they finally got up after seeing me give drinks and take orders for tables that came in after them. I never saw them come back, which was good. And that was the night I not only got a $60 tip on a $40 tab, but made more tips than any shift I ever had there. Gonna get buried, and not too exciting, but I used to be the closing cashier / relief pick for a large supermarket for 3 years, and it was usually my job to do the closing announcements. "We are closing in 30 minutes. Bring your stuff to Chexton 6. Only doors still unlocked are by the produce," yada yada. But almost every night we would have some people still shopping several minutes after close. And my speaker announcements had to get snarkier and snarkier. "Hey, folks, we have been closed for 5 minutes. Please bring your final purchases up. Attention. We have been closed for 10 minutes and soon our lights will be turned off and I cannot turn them back on. Hello. Shoppers, we have now been closed for 15 minutes and we would all like to go home. Please come to Chexton 6 immediately. Attention late night shoppers, we have been closed for a whole 20 minutes. Our doors are locked, our lights are off and soon our registers will be locked too. If you want to leave with anything you have to come up now or leave it behind. Every damn night. And usually the same few people. Just come to the store a half hour earlier or go to a faking Walmart. Don't force people to stay overtime." I worked in fast food for a long time, then in a cafe for a long time, so by the end of my time at both of those places I was pretty done with the customers. I have a lot of stories, but here are 3. Not really massive clapbacks, but pretty satisfying to deliver at the cafe. Most of our customers were lovely regulars. We were also very busy, so not struggling financially. My boss said, if people don't treat you with respect then don't show it back. So I started doing that. Occasionally we'd get an awful asshole who was a first time customer. Once a guy said, after yelling at me for quite some time, "I'll go to one of the cafes down the road." So I said okay and looked at him. He proceeded to get more angry and ask for the manager. I was the manager. Got to say something along the lines of, "I'm the manager on today. I don't appreciate you yelling at me or any of my co-workers." We have many other people to serve who are all nice to us. He didn't like that and just left. It was a while ago, and I was angry, so I don't remember the wording exactly, but it was great to say that to him. And in fast food there was plenty, but my favorite was, customer, I've been waiting 20 minutes for my food. Me. Points to screen showing their order, and waiting time, can you see this? You ordered your food 3 minutes ago. Or, I also had a friend who was a store manager of a fast food restaurant who didn't take shit from anyone. A lot of people would try to get free food. In drive-thru there's a screen that shows everything the customer is ordering. Customer walks in after going through drive-thru. I ordered a cheeseburger on my order, but didn't get it, store manager, so I took your order. And when I said, does everything on the screen look correct? You said yes. And when I read it out to you, you said it was right. So why did you tell me twice it was correct when it wasn't? They usually didn't have anything good to say, so he'd just tell them, if they want a cheeseburger they have to pay for it. Classic, not me, but was my friend, that I had the privilege of witnessing. We work at a grocery store, and customers are often asked to show their bags when they're a certain size. Anyway, we had the center security call us and warn us about this particular couple who had just stolen from a nearby store. I spot the couple and tell my friend as she's running the checkout department. She goes and waits for them to check out and asks to see their bags. The customer starts doing the whole I always shop here and I've Northeast VAR been asked to show my bag before. How dare you? My friend tells them that all bags over an A4 size of paper need to be checked and that it is a condition of entry. The customer begrudgingly shows her bag. Turns out there's a few things in there with no receipt or proof of purchase. When that was all dealt with, the customer then tells us how she'll never shop here again. My friend just deadpans and says that's fine. Cue the customer looking like someone had just shat in her hands. That's fine. Didn't you hear me? I said I'm never shopping here again. So my friend said I don't deserve to spoken to like this, just for doing my job. Frankly, if you never come back here it'll be a blessing. Have a great night and thanks for picking. Insert store here. My friend came back to give me all the stuff the lady was trying to steal, so I could put it away, while the lady just stood there gobsmacked for what felt like forever. The rest of us were trying our hardest to be professional and not crack up while she was still there. The restaurant I work in gets a late bump when the local factory lets second shift out. They're the worst. Very rude. Tip terribly if at all. Incredibly needy. I have to close a dining room a lot, and I've started giving less and less of a shit with them. I've gotten a few good jabs back at them, but the first time was my favorite. It's almost 1 AM. I'm completely burned out trying to be nice to these people, who are nothing but beachy and rude. One table is actually making fun of me while I wait on them, because they don't think I speak Spanish. I'm in a bad mood, because I know when these $200 tabs are going to get me $5 at most, after putting me through my paces for 2 hours. I'm making the rounds for last call, letting them know when the dining room is going to stop serving. And as I'm talking to one table, a guy behind me leans back in his chair and starts snapping at me. And he keeps doing it, and then he starts going, hey, louder and louder. I turn around and tell him I'll be with him in just a minute, and turn back to the only table that's been kind of nice. Dude leans back again and grabs my shirt. Now, I don't like being touched. I'm twitchy. I've smacked customers' hands away reflexively when they try to touch me. Why do old white dudes always want to grab my arm? And this guy just came at me with an actual vaguely aggressive grab. I wheel on him and smack him away hard. Pointed right at his face with my pen in my hand and angrily, yet quietly tell him, you wait your faking turn, dude. Went back to his beer real quick. I have a lot of similar stories, but this one is probably my favorite since the customer self-owned. I just had to help her realize it. I used to vaccinate people's pets, which comes with a fair risk of being bit, as you can imagine. I became pretty skilled at assessing which ones just needed to be approached slowly, mild, a towel over their head, moderate, a muzzle, spicy, or some combination of all three. Before we began vaccinating, one lady came in needing a rabies vaccine for her dog, and as I approach, the dog starts growling at me, mild to moderate. Not uncommon if the dog is in an unfamiliar place being approached by a stranger. No biggie. I maintain my distance, introduce myself, and asks if her dog ever tries to bite. The owner says yeah, he bites spicy. I say okay, thanks for letting us know. I'll go grab a muzzle. You can't put a muzzle on my dog, thinking she means the dog won't let me put the muzzle on. Okay, sometimes dogs trust their owner more. Would you mind putting it on for us? Karen replies, no, I mean nobody is going to muzzle my dog. Okay, I can't vaccinate your dog without a muzzle. It would be dangerous for my team and I. She fixes me with her best steely glare. Listen, squints at my name tag. D's dead. It's either you vaccinate my dog, or I'm leaving. I reply yes ma'am, those are your choices. I've told you I won't vaccinate your dog without a muzzle, so you can exercise the other option. She slowly realizes what's happened, deflates a little, and walks away. A guy got mad about us not having a dessert they ordered from our catering company that there was absolutely no way we could get for him. Cussed out my coworker, had her call me over as her manager. I gave him the same answer. I offered a chocolate cake as a replacement, which he rejected, and asked for my manager. My manager comes over and is berated and yelled at as well, offers a second cake and is turned down again, and my GM walks over. Now this guy tells at him to get him what he wants. He for the fourth time explains to this guy that we can't get it for him. To which the man replies, well, if I can't get it then I'm gonna tell my wife and you can sort it out with her. And my GM stifles a laugh and says go right ahead. I know it's not snippy or anything, but just the fact this man thinks that somehow his wife will fare better at doing something we've all stated is impossible and made attempts to fix while being berated and cussed at. The thought of how insane this man's wife must be for him to think that she might fare better has given all of us plenty of laughs. I live in the UK, where such a thing as a lime and soda is a utter soft drink phenomenon. If you don't drink alcohol and you're over 25, it seems like a pint of cheap lime cordial and carbonated tap water is your only option. Anyway, I started working at a new place, and one of the locals is a recovering alcoholic, so this inexplicably popular soft was her go-to. Typically I'd use 25 ml 30 milliliters, 1 ounce of cordial to a half a pint of soda water. These seem to be pretty standard measures. The first one I made her, she gawked at, taken aback with abhorrence and lament. How much bloody lime have you put in there? She bellowed. A colleague of mine hurried the drink away from here, like it was a mysteriously corked 1989 Bordeaux, and quickly made her a new one with probably about 5 milliliters of cordial. She took one sip and said, wow, that's much better than whatever that was that he made me. As she pointed at me, I simply shrugged and said, that's because I made you a lime and soda, Julie. I never had to make that witch one of her wicked brews again. I don't think this is the best one, but it just happened tonight and I'm still shook. I made a post in r/to from me or server a few hours ago if anyone's interested in the details of what the customer did. But long story short, she randomly berated me right before paying with no prior indication that she was unhappy with anything. I walked away when she was mid-roast. She was literally just roasting me as a person. She wasn't even complaining about anything food or service related and didn't return to her table or acknowledge her in any way. We were extremely busy and she had zero hope of getting anyone other than her server, me, to give her the time of day. She had threatened not to pay when she was going off on me, and she needed a debit machine to pay, so me literally ghosting her definitely gave her the opportunity to easily walk out without paying. After about 20 minutes it was very clear I really didn't give a fuck whether she paid or not, and her temper tantrum did not benefit her in any way. She finally tracked someone else down and paid them. She's going to be even more mad when she files a complaint against me and my manager defends me and doesn't compensate her in any way. Background: I worked in a fish and chip shop in the UK during my last year of undergrad at uni. This particular encounter happened a couple weeks before final exams, in May/June time. About the same time for A-level final exams. Important. The shop closes at 10 PM and we didn't cook anything to top up the food available in the cabinets after 9 PM, so they are usually pretty empty, just a few things ready to go. We cooked everything else to order at that time, which is never more than 5 to 6 minutes wait. A nice lady, NL, comes in and orders some fresh food around 9:30. She waits outside as she's with her friends who have a dog. A few minutes later a entitled mid-50-year-old man comes in, Ed for entitled dad. He looks in the cabinet and sees there's not much left and starts grumbling that he's going to have this or that and asks how long the wait is to have something else cooked. I say 5 to 6 minutes. He grumbles some more at this point before Ed orders, "NL food is ready," so I call her back in to start the rest of her order. Ed did not like this. He started to argue he was here first, but I just said no, she's been waiting for item to cook and took the rest of her order, which included most of the things left in the cabinet. Every item I took, Ed sighed and grunted. NL paid and left, and now Ed started to argue. Ed, for God's sake, how long will it be for items now? She just took everything I wanted. Me. 5 to 6 minutes Ed, I want this and this and hurry up. This is unacceptable. Time is money. Me, sorry, but we only cook to order after 9 PM, so we don't waste food Ed. My son is waiting in the car. He needs to get home to Revizim. I apologize sir, there's nothing I can do. Anyway I always find it difficult to revise after 9 PM anyway. I find there's not much point Ed. I have to mark exam papers too when I get home. So you can see why time is money. The more I do the more I get paid. My son's A-levels depend on him revising. His uni placement depends on it. His future depends on it. I know how he feels. I have exams coming up too, and my whole university degree depends on it. Ed suddenly goes quiet and actually apologizes. Me, yeah it's pretty stressful having to revise and work late nights. Ed waits for his order in silence, and on his way out I say, tell your son good luck for his exams. I was a server at a higher-end barbecue restaurant and have a table of 8. A couple small kids, and it looked like the parents and a couple that was their friend was at the table. While I was checking on the table I observed one of the boys around 7 or 8 chewing on his sweet tea kid's cup lid. After another round of check on the table the father asked for another beer and said his son needed a refill. Not a problem I said, I'll be back in a minute. While getting the son's refill I asked myself if I should replace the lid that the kid was chewing on like it was meant for it. I reasoned with myself, if the dad is okay with his son chewing on plastic what's the point of wasting another lid? So I gave the father the beer and sat the kid's cup down with a chewed on lid. Upon sitting it down the father starts getting loud and berating me about it. He said something along the lines of what, if your mother was around, didn't your mother teach you anything? I looked at him and said, well sir, my mother died when I was a child, but if she was going to teach me anything I would bring to this table it would be to not chew on kids' cups with lids. He got very quiet. There was more than 8 people at the table, so I charged them gratuity, got paid and they left. I'm a server at a bowling alley, and after helping my tables I was getting through the snack bar line when I noticed these 3 guys, probably 18 over 19. Come up to the window and sarcastically ask, hey, so the giant cookies are free, right? To which I politely respond, no, they're 2.39 each. They all start snickering, and at this point I can tell they are trying to mess with me and my coworkers. The older one goes, come on, why not? You can't just give us some? We always come here, and we won't tell anyone, friend. Now I'm not gonna risk being fired over something as petty as stealing for 3 people I don't know, but I'll play along. I say, so, if I give you guys free stuff then what do I get, friend? The middle one goes, my love and affection. Me, 21-year-old gay dude, now you're too young for me, and not my type, but thanks for the offer. I shut them down, and one mumbles something rude in Spanish. They come back later, when I'm way busier and visibly understaffed, and ask the same thing. I'm not in as good of a mindset to deal with these guys as I was before. Point guy 1, so we're gonna deliver on your promise, right? Free cookies and soda. Me, I didn't promise y'all nothing. You can buy something if you want, or all I can give you is water cups. Guy 2, the one that cussed in Spanish earlier. Hella attitude now. Well, it's cause we are Mexican, isn't it? Probably voted for Trump. You know we are Mexican, right? I snap when I saw him grin again. Point me and him gay. You think I give a shit about your race? First of all, I don't vote for racists. Second, learn how to talk to service staff cause y'all ain't getting shit from me now. As they walk away he mumbles the same Spanish phrase me. You think I don't know what pinch pindijo means, idiot. Turn dreadlol. The fun part was when the other two looked super embarrassed and made their friend leave. The other two apologized to me later after their friend stormed out. I just told them that not all white people are Trump supporters and that registering to vote is the best thing to do. I don't take that shit. 3 stories when I would greet my tables. I would happily say hello, my name is Royal_Justice. Thank you for joining us here at restaurant name. How are you doing today? I got a response sometimes like sweet tea or coke. I was put a confused face on and say how I did not know that was a state of being. Then move on to take their order. I worked at a restaurant that was known for its Cajun/fried food here in Houston. I was serving on group of people who were very loud and rude. We get a lot of these kinds of groups. Other servers know who I'm talking about. They will run you all night and then will leave you a $5 tip, no matter how large the bill is. Another thing about groups like this, they will call in for 20. Show up with 15 then say they have 25 coming in late after you made the table and they sat down. This group had 4 people come in late, sit a table next to the larger one in my section and order food. Both tables were very rude all night and I knew they wouldn't tip. So by the end of the night I was done with their bullshit. Point here is part you have been reading for. I had dropped off the checks to the smaller table in my section. When I went to pick up the check I would always look to see if it was cash or card so I could ask if they wanted change. This one particularly rude lady paid cash. I looked at the check and saw how much cash she had left. Then I looked her in the eye and asked, would you like your 5 cents back? She embarrassingly said no and I walked away thanking her. I did get a $2 tip on a $40 tab. Told my manager and she agreed I couldn't get in trouble because all I did was ask her about her change. Point TLDR called a lady out for her shitty tip in front of all her friends and didn't get in trouble for it. 3. This table was similar to the one above but a different night. For context, I'm a white 6-foot male. I had a couple coworkers who we had similar hairstyles and some facial hair, but we didn't look alike. Also we wore name tags on our vests. So if you couldn't remember our names you just had to look at that. So myself and another white guy, we will call him Tim. Not real name of course, were on this table. One of the ladies says Tim's name to me. I told her, oh that's not me, I'm Royal_Justice. I was polite with my response. She looks at me and says, whatever, all you white folks look alike. Me kind of taken aback look back at the group and saying that's not racist. Never got in trouble or heard anything back from them. I currently work at McDonald's. This lady ordered a frappe and a medium fry. Our fried dude had the majority of the fry orders on the warmer racks, so I went and grabbed the fry, stuck it in a bag, and called her number. It just so happened that the exact instant I called her number, the fried dude pulled a fresh basket out of the fryer. So she points. I'm confused. I point to my ear to ask if she's deaf, to which I get, I want those. I look and still not understanding. I ask, you want what? And she rolls her eyes and says, the fresh ones. I tilt my head and ask, then why didn't you ask for fresh ones? I was already mad and I realize this wasn't the thing to ask. I go and get a fresh set, much to the anger of my fried dude, and hand her the fries in the same bag. Well, do you eat cold fries? If I'm hungry enough, yes, and if you can see where the fries are, you can see that they're in a warmer and they're not cold. Here's your fresh French fries. It's not a great one, but it's the only time I've actually felt compelled to sass someone back. She didn't even speak at first, or order fresh made ones, which you can do. She just pointed. Kinda surprised she didn't pull a Karen.